Hey, what's up, everybody? Greg J, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. How are you today? Everything good? Yeah, we're still in this COVID-19 environment. Man, you know, did you get vaccinated? You know, they're encouraging that. Cases are surging all over our community. Man, just stay centered, stay peaceful. Be careful out there. You know, wear your mask, all that stuff that they're telling you to do. Today, I want to contemplate with me. So, critical race theory, right? We're hearing a lot about it. What is it? You know, a lot of folks don't want us to have it. We don't want to teach this in schools. You know, this is history, American history, told from the perspective of African Americans, but maybe not even just African Americans. One could say from Native Americans, from Asian Americans, Latino Americans. The supremacy, the systemic racism has reached across all colors of melanin. Yeah. Something. For me, you know, I'm just a normal guy, observer of the community. You know, we got this platform here to observe our community and have a great conversation, casual but compelling conversation that's culturally relevant from a decidedly global perspective. You know, we also bring experts and academics and folks that can help us, you know, dissect the stuff that is before us. Tuesday, we're thankful to Tommy Ngubeni, all the way live from Johannesburg, giving us an up close and personal perspective of what's going on in that Black nation. President was jailed, riots ensued, you know, overwhelming COVID numbers, economic disparities, and, you know, what is the blessed hope for that great nation over there in South Africa? And today, we're here, you know, down there in Texas, Lone Star State. That's where my dad's from. My dad's from Texas. Y'all got some folks in Texas? Let us know in the comments there. But down there in Texas, the Senate, you know, voted 18-4 to not teach critical race theory in the schools. They don't want the students to learn that white supremacy exists. They don't want the students to learn about the American history from the perspective of Black folk. You know, I always think about this when we did Juneteenth in June, right? Juneteenth, and we did all this great research, and we were linked up with the folks in Galveston, Texas, and we were learning all of these stories, right? And, you know, beforehand, Juneteenth, you know, that was one of those things that were whispered in our household. Not whispered, but, you know, we celebrated it in our communities. Mama told you about it. Papa told you about it. Grandma, aunties, uncles, you know. Now it's just mass marketed. It's all over the place. You know, people are trying to celebrate Juneteenth. But with that comes stories. We learned a lot. It's American history. We also learned in the month of June, we talked about Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, burned down the whole Black Wall Street, the black side of town. Burned it down, dropped bombs on the people. Hush, hush until recent years, whispered. It's American history. It happened. So what's wrong with critical race theory? Then they wanted to, you know, enact some voting laws down there that are suppressing people's right to vote. So they can't get a quorum in the House because the Democrats packed up, went up to Washington to seek federal legislation. You know, some backup. That's what they need to, you know, stop these laws from passing. There is a lot going on in the state of Texas. So we decided, you know what, we'll reach out to the NAACP Texas. And we found this gentleman here, meeting him for the first time. But man, he's an attorney. You know, the college, you was going to the dean's office. I'm in the dean's office right now. You know, the dean of the law school there at Texas Southern University. Please welcome Gary Bledsoe. Thank you, my brother, for coming on.
Thank you.
How are you today? Yes, sir.
Pretty
yes,
good.
sir.
You're doing well. Thank you so
yes,
much.
Sir. You know, we're just observers of the community, Mr. Bledsoe. We want to know what's going on. We're just normal folks trying to figure it all out, you know. And so when we began to market your appearance on the show, I got two emails from some very influential people, and they want to know, what is critical race theory? Break that down for us.
Well, critical race theory is history being taught from the other point of view. It is not complicated. I think that sadly the people who are opposing critical race theory don't really know what it is. The defense of critical race theory that you hear the proponents and the bill authors use is simply that they don't want something taught that makes their people feel bad. They don't want things taught in the classroom that would, for example, make white children feel bad. They contend that they want to be judged on their own merits, and that if you teach critical race theory, that spills over onto them. So they don't want that taught because they don't want negativism from what whites may have done in the past to spill over onto them. So what they are doing is doing something like Hitler did, and I don't really mean to exaggerate, I really mean that. They're trying to dictate thought and what people can present. They're disregarding the truth. And that recurring defense is, we don't want something taught that makes people feel bad. But critical race theory is not some bogus science or what have you. It's really being able to tell something from the other point of view. You know, slavery is never told from the black person's point of view, for example. You know, a couple of years ago in Texas, they decided that no textbooks in Texas could use the term slavery, that you had to call it triangular trade. And so we've had this battle with them for quite some time, where they try to blanch history. But what critical race theory is when you tell something from other points of view for others that are involved in the setting. I think we all know that means you're more likely to have something truthful that is put forward. They even take it a step further by things that give them particular concern, like the 1619 Project. And they actually included in the bill that would specifically be prohibited from being taught. So the educators we've been working with, those that are working with educators that are educational organizers, all understand the difficulty that this puts educators in, because it puts them in a box where you can't really tell the truth. One of the things they say is that when you present anything that is of a political nature and history or social studies, that you have to present the other point of view. So one of the interesting conversations was one of the Latino legislators from El Paso put this question to the author of the bill. So, and she talked about the Walmart killing that was targeted towards Latinos, but also a number of African Americans were killed there. And she said, so we have to teach this from the killer's point of view as well. And of course, the author said, well, I don't think that's what it requires, but it is what it requires. The idea is that some things are going to be expressly prohibited. You're not supposed to teach things that make people feel bad, but when you do teach other things that are political, you have to put out all the different points of view. And so it really creates a morass that people don't know how to operate in.
You know, you mentioned how long it's been around. I mean, you know, Derek Bell and others, Cheryl Harris, all these scholars been, you know, creating and analyzing and studying this critical race theory since the 70s, right? And it's reminiscent for me, even over if you shift lanes and go over into theology and you talk about things like liberation theology, but it is changing the channel, changing the lens through which we learn things that we have been traditionally taught, you know. And for me, it's just very simple. I mean, it's like it happened. Why not teach it? It happened. You cannot deny it. It happened. You know.
Of
Folks
course, the
are
answer
really,
is it makes them feel bad, right? So that's the
yeah,
part.
yeah.
They actually say that, and they say that repeatedly on the Senate floor, for example.
Mm.
So they don't really kind of hide it. We don't want things taught that make our people feel bad.
You know, so now that that's law, okay, it just for
It's not
me,
law. It passed the
not law
Senate.
yet.
We do have one bill that did allegedly pass the House, but I think there was or passed the legislature. But we think there are reasons to challenge that. That may be why the governor put it on the call. So that Senate bill only passed the Senate. But the great thing is when those legislators left the state, they can't send this bill over to the House. So this bill, as it stands right now, is just sitting there. So it is not law. The one that
Okay.
the SB3 is not law.
It's not law. Okay. That's good to know. Good to know. Okay. So, you know, share with the people what happened. So the Democrats was it both House and Senate? They packed up and went to Washington. So that, you know, what happened?
Well, first of all, it takes 150 members of the House of Representatives in Texas. There are 31 members of the Texas Senate. And the Constitution requires a 2/3 percent of the membership to be present in order to constitute a quorum to conduct business. And so that means you need 100 people in the House, or you need 21 people in the Senate. In the House, there are 67 Democrats. So they needed to get at least 51 Democrats who would go to D.C. They got 58 of the 67 to go. In the Senate, they needed 11. They were able to get 9. So that's why the Senate was able to vote on the bill, because they did have enough present. They had 22 there voting, and all they needed was 21. If 2 of the Democrats had left the Senate, then that 18-4 vote would never have occurred.
Okay, I saw them on at the Martin Luther King memorial in Washington, D.C. with Al Sharpton on yesterday. I saw them there. And so what do they hope to do when they're there? What is the deal? We're calling for backup. We're encouraging the Black Caucus to support. And what does support mean?
Well, several things. Obviously, we're seeking to have people, and we're even trying to provide financial support because they're making an incredible sacrifice to be there. I don't think people understand the sacrifice that they have to make. They not only have to leave their means of support and living, but they also have to incur expenses in being where they are. And so it's going to be important that we keep them there. And I'll try to explain why it's so important to the whole nation to keep them there. It's not just important in Texas. This is not a Texas issue. This is a national issue. The Black Caucus, they were among the leaders of the Democratic Caucus that led to the walkout. They were among the most vocal, the most rigid, the ones that were most serious and pushed it, because this was not an easy decision to tell people to uproot, to leave your home for 30 days, to know that a warrant would be issued for you when you come back to the state. And most of them were able to continue and have their jobs or see their families on weekends and things. They can't do that now. A couple of them drove, like John Busey, all the way, and so they could take their families with him because his wife was 7 months pregnant. But, you know, there's some real difficulties. I think one of the members of the delegation was scheduled to get married, and she had to postpone her marriage because she's in D.C. So there are some real sacrifices that they're having to make by just being there, but they're standing between what we know as democracy and us moving into something much less than democracy in Texas, but also in the country. And that's what we need to understand. See, this is part of this is about, will be about redistricting later on. There's a huge battle in this country about the move to try to get 218 votes in the House. And so whether or not, and Nancy Pelosi continues as the person that will run the House, or whether or not Kevin McCarthy becomes the Speaker. And so that's kind of a real concurrent issue. And what was occurring in Texas is these bills were so extreme to where they were trying to Stacey Abrams proof the state. Okay, these were bills that were so extreme that they would have made the 1923 legislature in Texas proud. That's the legislature that decided at the time when Democrats controlled the state and Democrats were the opposing party, when they passed a law saying that Black people could not vote in the Democratic primary. This bill is so pervasive and comprehensive, and it addresses voting at so many different levels and components that it's so intimidating and suppressive, but it's designed to ensure, and what I like to say is it's designed to ensure to make 40 greater than 60. This is all about making 40 greater than 60. And what's occurring in Texas is going to occur elsewhere because you look at the whole issue with the 218 and you look at the growth in Texas and you look at what's occurring in this country. Texas is now majority minority. After the last census, it was 49.4% of our adult population was Black and brown. And then when you add the Asian population, it put the minority population over 50%. That percentage has grown. You know, we're the state that grew the most out of any state. We got 4.2 more million people, and 80% of those are Black, brown, and Asian. So people see the browning of the state and they don't want to share power. Well, America is browning as well. And that's why you see all the bellicosity on the floor of the House of Representatives and all these issues and concerns with immigration. That's why President Trump was so bellicose on the issue of immigration, because there is a strong segment within white America that really has a lot of angst over the immigration issue. So immigration is at front and center part of that discussion. So what's occurring in Texas is a precursor to what's going to be occurring in the nation. And the bottom line is, when you have shown that you can't bring minorities into your tent in the numbers that you want to make them part of your coalition, what you have to do is you have to exclude them from being able to vote. So that's what's occurring in Texas. And it is really broad and comprehensive. It was done by design. They got some of the most demonic people around, no doubt, and sat them down and decided on how can we make doggone sure that if they send Stacey Abrams to Texas, there's nothing she can do. And that's kind of what we were talking about. And it's going to happen all around the country. The Texas bill is much worse than the Georgia bill.
You know, you're really illuminating the importance and the sacrifices that these legislators are making, you know, to make this trip to Washington, D.C. You know, I mean, you're putting a human perspective on, you know, what they're doing for our people, for our communities, in the state of Texas. And as you said, is setting the table for what could happen all across the country. I want to go back to something that you said that just for clarity for me. So what did you mean by when they come back, they get warrants? Are they violating the law by making it happen, going off to Washington, D.C.?
Well, the state constitution provides that each chamber can set rules to enforce ensuring that they have a quorum. And so under the House rules, if you are absent to break quorum, they can have you arrested and brought to the chamber.
Wow. Well, there it is, So what is the NAACP doing outside of financial, support? And that's important. That's essential. What are you doing on the ground to keep the people informed and to keep the voters, I guess I would say, educated on the importance of what's going on? Because one thing that I keep hearing, and it does pain me, especially in these days and time, the brothers and sisters, I'm not going to vote, So what is the NAACP doing to educate the people, let them know that, hey, your legislators are hard at work on the front line, and these are the important issues as to why you need to cast that ballot?
Well, we're doing many, many things. We had a rally last week in Austin, and we joined the Texas Impact, League of United Latin American Citizens, and the League of Women Voters. Texas Impact is a religious organization, and had a rally. We've had a number of rallies. We've had a number of news conferences with the Black Caucus and certain members of the Democratic delegation to try to bring favor. We've had lobby days, brought in witnesses to testify against the bill, helped to coordinate buses to bring people into Austin. I have offered guest viewpoints on this. I have a guest viewpoint now that I'm trying to get some of the news publications supporting the legislators, because some of the news publications have gotten to be a little bit misguided and criticize the legislators for leaving. And I think their point of view needs to be put out there. So we're trying to do that as well. And our national organization has decided to embrace them and to help provide funding for the legislators and to help get the moral point of view out there. And so President Derek Johnson at the national level is working with the caucus, and Chair Nicole Collier and Vice Chair Ron Reynolds, and all trying to get more of their voices out there and to make the picture clearer, with the view towards trying to push forward some kind of legislation in Washington, whether it's H.R. 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, or whether it's H.R. 1, whether it's the new S.R. 1 that they're coming up with that has Joe Manchin's input. They're trying to work on something that would try to nix these things so that we can't continue to have this fight. Because if the Congress doesn't do it, it's going to put us in a very precarious position. What we need to understand is this. We have a very conservative United States Supreme Court. That United States Supreme Court that maybe Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall was able to look back at, even when it was dominated by conservatives. But they knew there was a certain element of basic humanity where they could reach conservatives and they could win very difficult cases in front of very difficult judges. And no disrespect to them, because there'd never been greater lawyers ever come on the planet of the earth, but they'd have a much more difficult time now, because these judges are result oriented. These are people that come out of movements, and so the result is what matters, not the law. And so they create things like the doctrine that I think personally was somewhat created to try to throw out Section 4 so that Section 5 would not be operable. So we need something like that from the federal level that tries to nix these things, because what's actually occurring is basically a revolution going on in front of our eyes. One side understands it's a revolution. The other side is acting like it's regular. It's the same as usual, and they're out there trying to debate and worry about parliamentary maneuvers and things like that. When these other guys are sinister, this is essentially, and I don't mean to be extreme, and I hope your voters know I'm not a very extreme guy. I'm not a radical guy. But this is so akin to what occurred in Germany years ago. When you can have a law like the SB 7 that passed during came out of the conference committee during the regular session when they first voted and went to Mount Zion Church in Austin. That bill was going to allow a judge just to come up and with a lower standard of proof, just decide even without proof of fraud that just overturn on their gut feeling, overturn the results of an election. Now, who wants that, right? We know who wants that, right? And of course, after they voted and that issue became known to the public, all of the Republican members of the committee who were responsible for putting it in there all said that they weren't responsible for putting it in there. So how did it get in the bill, right? How did it get in the bill?
Yeah,
What was in the bill?
Yeah. That's very interesting. And though I agree with you, we are at a point of revolution. I mean, we've got to fight this fight. I saw Reverend William Barber yesterday, and he was saying the fight is in the courtroom. So we've got to, and make sure that our frontline soldiers are, the brilliant legal minds like yourself. But it is a revolution going on right now for us in the Black community. It's a cultural revolution. We're looking at things a lot differently. I feel like we have to take our education upon ourselves. If they're going to block things like critical race theory, maybe we need to just go ahead and take that into our own schools, into our churches, after school programs, all that, and teach it, amongst ourselves. And then also supporting our legislators who are acting on our behalf at the various state capitals and even the local level, and of course, up there in Washington, D.C., just like what the people from Texas are doing right now, making a stand, drawing a line in the sand, and ready to fight, because when we fight, we win. That's really what the deal is in this day and time. So yeah, man, it's a revolution. We are at war, in a very real way.
And I think January 6th, we have to understand January 6th is connected to all of this. We need to understand there's a strong nucleus of people that have made a conscious decision that they would rather have a non-democratic form of government rather than share power with Black and brown people. They just need to state it for what it is. And I think we heard that compelling testimony from those police officers this week and about the racism from that crowd, and the types of things they were saying and doing and what they were wearing. We need to understand there's that undercurrent. I mean, that white supremacist movement that the FBI is now talking about, the counterintelligence groups, those are real serious threats to liberty now. And they're out there training and with arms and all kinds of weapons. And it's kind of frightening. And I don't mean to be anyone to try to frighten people, but I care about people. I want people to be aware that these guys are serious. And the fact that what January 6th had ended that day doesn't mean that what's actually being done has ended, because if you listen to what the intelligence agencies are saying now, the problem has continued. And the sad thing is, when we have people like Russia that can benefit from that, and with this, the way that the internet is just so open, we see where these things are being magnified by many times. And so you have these sites, and one of the things the Senate Intelligence Committee found was that that part of the Russian component in interfering with the 2016 election was specifically designed toward going after Black voters, right? They
Mhm.
put these bogus sites up of black voters trying to manipulate and antagonize and invade our community. And that's continued to happen. So there's kind of another component that hasn't been really discussed that much, but that's about, when you have a democracy and it can be fragile. And this is like, going into battle and somebody says the opposing fighter has a glass jaw. So they tell you, keep punching for the jaw, look for an opening and hit the jaw. Well, we have a weakness, and that weakness is the racism that continues to be a problem in this country.
Mhm.
And I think that's been exposed. And those people who want to diminish us in the world are already manipulating that right now. And so they're working with the forces from within, and that puts us in a real vulnerable position.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, we've been using this. It's a kind of cliched now, but stay woke because you're absolutely right. All of these things are manifesting for real, right in front of our eyes. I mean, it's really something. Uh, you know, all right. So all of this is going on there, Dean Bledsoe. All of this stuff is going on, and now in the midst of a pandemic, right? And so now you're hearing, man, we thought we were coming out of it, things were opening up and everything, but now we have a tremendous resurgence with all of these Delta variants. At least that's what they're telling us and everything. So, should these companies and the government, I mean, they're starting to mandate mask requirements, and people are taking to the streets. So they're saying, no, we don't want to wear the mask. You don't have the right to do that. Is it a violation of our rights when institutions make us wear masks? And what is the alternative? We got to stop this pandemic.
Well, that was an issue actually that we litigated during the election in 2020. And after being invited by a very conservative panel to continue to raise the issue after we'd lost, and then they reversed on one issue in our favor because we'd sued the state saying that the state should require masks to be worn at polls and to adopt reasonable rules to protect people at the polling places. They kicked out all of our suit and they upheld all of it except that one part. And they specifically invited us to bring it back again. So we went back to the court and the judge ruled in our favor that time, but then they overturned it.
Hmm.
And in the opinion, they talked about the rights of individuals being infringed not to wear masks. And I'm thinking, my gosh, this is incredible, because what they're saying is their right trumps my right to live. And so we have these competing rights, right? I have a right to be able to go and exercise my right to vote, which is fundamental. And I have the right to do it in a secure and safe way. And the government has a responsibility to make sure that it's secure and safe. But under that kind of ruling, you can't require masks to be worn at the polling site. Now, I think that was a bad decision. I think you can wear it, but if we look at the one instance where the Supreme Court had to talk about something similar during the pandemic, if you remember, they overturned a New York law saying that it infringed upon religious organizations in terms of requiring people to wear masks within religious services. And so that law was invalidated. So that there's a great concern. And, when you become part of a movement, that's a real issue to try to get to 5 votes at the U.S. Supreme Court. I think as a matter of public safety, you clearly should be able to do it. I think I would say that people should do it and worry about the consequences later. Let people take you up to the Supreme Court, and let's make the Supreme Court decide that and look at evidence, because I would hope that even a very conservative Supreme Court, at least 3 or 4 of them who are movement conservative, so it's going to be really hard to reach them. But I would hope that somehow we could cobble together 5 votes with the right facts and the right data to be put in, because I can see an individual having a better argument about not wanting to have a vaccination than about not wanting to have a mask. The vaccination, I think everyone should get vaccinated, but I can see people saying, well, it's just, it hasn't been finally approved. We don't know what long-term consequences are and things like that. Those things aren't nefarious. But I think in terms of when we know there's a pandemic, you can't deny the fact that there's a pandemic. And we can't allow lay people to say, I'm not going to wear a mask and go out there and be able to kill someone. And so that was a big issue, for example, with our election bills, because what happened was during the 2020 election, these antagonistic and bigoted poll watchers would go into our communities where we have Black election judges, and they refused to wear masks. And so, and they had, it's almost like they were told to do this. And so they would go to sites when white voters would come up to vote, they wouldn't do anything. If a Black voter or brown voter would come up, they'd go and stand right behind them. And they didn't wear masks.
Wow.
And so the poll watchers were telling them you couldn't do that. Or the Black election judges were saying you can't do this. They got into big fights. They tried to get the Black election judges removed. They weren't successful. So that's why we have this law here that is intended to empower the poll watchers and make the poll watchers above the election judges so that they can do that. But then now think about that. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Some dude you don't know comes and stands behind you. He's looking unfriendly. He's getting to a foot or two, because the law, the current laws that we're talking about say they have to be close enough to see and hear. And they're the ones to determine how close they need to be to see and hear. So, they're not going to be 6 feet away. They're going to be a foot away, 2 feet away, and breathing on you, right? And so they're not going to be wearing a mask. And so you'd probably say, I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to let this dude come over here and kill me. And so that's what we're looking at. That's the kind of intimidation if you don't have people to mask up. But we're in a very difficult position. But I really encourage people to challenge the decisions that are out there that are in government positions. So if you've got a city that has where you have a governor says you can't do it and your city wants to do it, I'd say let's go ahead and do it, and let's hire the best lawyers possible, get the best database possible, and go up to the Supreme Court instead of just sitting there and allowing this. These are unjust laws, right? These are extreme right-wing laws that are meant to repress people. And when Martin Luther King drew the distinction between just laws and unjust laws, I think every single one of those laws that seek to give somebody a greater right because they're conservative and they don't want a mask than somebody else who has a simple desire to live and not to be infected by somebody they don't know. I think we need to challenge it and take it all the way. So that's what I would encourage people to do.
Mr. Bledsoe, as a veteran of the movement, we in the last year and a half, we have really, really seen a lot. I mean, we were already going through a lot prior to George Floyd's murder, but certainly what we have seen over the past year exploded across America and indeed across the world. If you take a step back and just contemplate with us, what is your feeling of what is the community saying as we take to the streets, and what are we saying as we have these battles in the halls of our legislative institutions? What's different? In the past, did Dr. King and them, did it work? Or are we now saying, well, no, that didn't work and we're trying something new? We're trying to formulate something new. What is your general? So just take a step back and, just kind of esoterically, if you will, contemplate with this, what you see the movement.
Well, a couple of that's a brilliant question, because that's one we need to answer. I don't think we've answered, because and I continue to do some of the same things that were done before, and we do those things. But I think that we have to understand that those things are not going to move, advance the ball, okay? Because I think what's occurred is that the people, the evil folks who sought to repress us from time hence, right, since after the Civil War, and every group and every generation has tried to repress us. They've always been committed to their desire to repress us and keep us out of the public domain. And so we have victories and we think we've won something, and we really haven't, because evil continues to work. And that's one of the sad things, because, you know, I'm a kid that was growing up going to college in the 70s and all that, thinking, wow, this is this is a new world. I can't believe the world I'm living in. Boom, it like the door gets shut, right? And so what Dr. King understood was that there was a certain level of humanity in human beings. And so he exploited that. He understood that, for example, marching wasn't going to do it, but marching where you would be antagonized, repressed, beaten by opposing forces would grab the hearts and strings of humanity. So it wasn't the march that did it, where you were just marching. But I think when you see good and innocent people marching, and people fire hosing people, or sicking dogs on them, or putting tear gas on them, that he understood that. And so when you go through and you look at whether it's Garrow's book or Branch's books or whatever, and you study Dr. King, he understood that. And so, you know, sadly, he did go and try to manipulate and make sure that, you know, that he was there. They did nothing wrong. They did nothing to really invite this, but going into situations where he knew that violence would occur because of the nature of the police or the white forces that were on the other side. Now we're in a different day, because I think people sat back and looked at it and decided we need to elect people where this doesn't matter, where this doesn't, or they don't care. And, you know, Charles Hamilton, Houston, and Thurgood Marshall is the same thing, where, you know, they knew, they tried to craft their cases. They didn't go after Brown versus Board for the first 15 years or so of them litigating in the realm of the 14th Amendment. They decided that they couldn't win that, so they tried to enforce it. And so they were going after the goodwill of people. And there was really some real conservative judges, but they could get them on some cases. Like, for example, the Supreme Court before Houston decided in favor of the NAACP, and Nixon v. Herndon by letting a black man vote in Texas in 1927. So, you know, you had those little things where you could look and see what are these people likely to go with, and so you could work that. But now they put people on the bench that are just result oriented, and so they're ones who are supposed to be battle tested. And so when the issues of conscience and morality come up, that's not supposed to mean anything to them. So we've got to figure out, is there some level that even those people we can reach? Because what they've done is try to put in more rigid people to understand. And so we have some people that are very conservative, that are holdovers, that our lives might depend on them. You know, John Roberts, you know, he's not an ideologue like many of the others. And so whether there's someone that slipped through, whether Kavanaugh might be someone who really isn't as conservative as they say, so maybe, but we've got to try to think of a way to see what level of humanity where we can reach these people. You know, for a while, I would win cases in front of all Republican or conservative courts trying to reach their humanity. And that kind of changed over time, where some of those courts just got more conservative, and I would just get the door slammed in my face. So we have to try to figure that out. But that's what's occurred in this country. If you looked at all the confirmation hearings with the Trump judges, they wouldn't even say that Brown versus Board was correctly decided. So we have to understand that Brown versus Board might be an issue, not just Roe v. Wade. We don't know what these guys are likely to do. So that's what we're dealing with. But I think that most people, we have many more good people than bad people in the world, many more good police than bad police. We have to come up with a way to really reach the people in middle America, the people that maybe President Trump turned off, the people who maybe are not Democrats, for example, but who maybe are or moderate Republicans or who are independents, and be able to put a moral message to them to let them know this is not about Democrats and Republicans. This is about right and wrong and humanity. That if you believe in right and wrong, whether you're agnostic or not, but any religion would ascribe to this, any legitimate religion, indigenous religion, or any of the more formal religions, right? They're going to ascribe to this, that this is really what's at stake. And so we've got to really reach out to these people to meld the movement, and to do what Dr. King did, but not understanding the dynamic of who the people are that we need to reach, and we need to design something that is likely to reach them. So I think the marches and things keep the conversation going, so it's good to have the marches and all that. But we have to come up with something more protracted that's designed to go after these folks and bring them on our side. Because until we bring them on our side, Mitch McConnell and all the others will continue to be obstructionists. And so we need to give them, because they, if anything, they're the ones who can maybe make Joe Manchin come and make another decision. Have Mitch McConnell quit being an adversary to civil rights and not allowing our protection bills to come up. So, but it's that community that they need to hear from, because they know our community doesn't vote for them. They're not worried about us. And the humanity issue is not driving them, but the humanity issue would drive these people. So we have to bring this back around and show people how this is humanity. And when you go back and look at what Martin Luther King has spoken about and written about, you look at what Nelson Mandela spoke about, you look at what Cesar Chavez spoke about. They all talked about how essential voting was, and how that all their fights and all their victories and things that we're getting for people wouldn't really mean anything until they got the right to vote. And that's what we all have to understand, that voting is that important and that essential, because it makes you somebody that needs to be reckoned with in your community.
I'm glad you mentioned those men, and I, when I reflect on the movements in those days, I'm reminded that, each of those movements really didn't get, well, I guess their traction was accelerated once the young people began to, become more and more involved. And you're out there at Texas Southern University, Black College. You're the dean of the legal school. What are the young people talking about? What are the thinkers of the young people that you're around every day, pouring all of this wisdom that you're pouring into us? I mean, this ain't the classroom, but you sure are giving us something to think about today. What are the young thinkers talking about in this day of cultural revolution?
Yeah. Well, I'm no longer the acting dean of the law school. I'm the executive director for external relations for the whole university. So I've actually moved over to the university side from the law school side, but I continue to have much dialogue and have a number of law students who work for me, et cetera. And so I'm very much in contact with them, and I'm in contact with the students here, because a number of them I visit with every day, and they are very much connected. They understand things at such a sophisticated level. When you look at their social media sites, when you engage them in conversation, and I try to put on events and things that will engage them in conversation and make for a richer environment. So whether we're talking about COVID-19 and athletics, or we're talking about connections with Africa and trying to connect people throughout the diaspora worldwide, and the powers that could be for persons of African descent, matters where you live. We put on a number of conferences like those, and we're even planning one now on AAPI and other hate and how they're related. So they're very sophisticated. They're much more sophisticated than when I came through in the 1970s, because I think whether it's the internet or things like that, they seem to understand, and we're not disconnected. They're one of the beautiful things that you'll find is that, like the NAACP Youth and College division here in Texas, which has always really been the best in the nation, and I say that very honestly because they win the best in the nation every year. When it's time to testify at the legislature, they're there. When it's time to protest on their campus, they're there. When it's time to get out the vote in the community that their campus is located in, they get out the vote. You know, when Hurricane Harvey hit here in Houston, you know, they were there. They were not listening to nonsense and others. They went and volunteered to try to help people and save lives. So young people are connected. I have to feel good about young people, good young white people and black people, because I want to think that a lot of this this hostility and hate, we have it in our younger groups, but we don't have it nearly to the level. We look at the January 6th incident, and we can see where some of the young white Americans turned their own parents in, right?
Sure
And
did.
so I think that says something. I mean, young people are different, and I'm not saying they're all going to believe in a certain point of view. I think people should have different points of view.
Yeah.
But I feel heartened by young people. But the question is what we're going to leave them, because these guys, what they're trying to design in Texas, and ultimately what they'll be trying to design in this country, will be something more similar to Germany than what we've been used to.
You know, earlier this week we had one of my friends. I love what you're talking about, building that connection with the continent of Africa. Here at Dream Creator Studio, Coffee Conversations, Beat City Radio, one of our mantras is to build a bridge of music, arts, and culture with Africa and African Americans. So we're always reaching over to the continent for news and information and perspectives. And this past Tuesday on Coffee Conversations, we had a renowned news anchor, very good friend of mine, to kind of give her perspectives on what was happening in that nation under COVID-19, with the former president being arrested and the ensuing riots after that. And it was, we began to learn through that dialogue that there were very similar circumstances, you know, the economic disparities, you know, how the government was trying to make relief grants to keep people housed, and just all of the stuff that we're hearing here. And one of the things she said, and it directly ties to what we're talking about today, is, you know, people got to get out and vote. You know, we got to vote, you know. And I was like, wow, you know, this is the same thing, you know. And I love that the next generations in our higher institutions are thinking global, because while we vote at home and we create these cultural exchanges across the globe, we can encourage our brothers and sisters over there to vote. They can encourage us, and we all come together and become stronger as a people. That's what I truly believe. Yeah.
And I love those comments. You know, one of our regents, Ron Price from Dallas, a guy who's, you know, even helped wager truces between Crips and Bloods, really kind of a bold fellow. You know, he said he had this thought that, you know, he looked around and everybody had a connection with the country of their ancestry. So whether you're Irish American or an Italian American or an English American, you had that. But with black folk, we didn't have it, but everyone else had that. And so that's why he's pushing us at Texas Southern to have a broader reach. And, you know, we've been part of I'm a board member of the Office of Historically Black Colleges and Universities, led by Dr. Fareed Muhammad out of Chicago. And Dr. Muhammad had a vision to draw a greater connection between HBCUs and Africa. And so, like, we're doing a project through the United Nations Department of Programs and the African Bureau, where we are educating African students at our schools through virtual learning. And so we have a class going on now. We're focusing on entrepreneurship because, like, with those that are concerned, like the Adekana Chiambori Kwayo, the former ambassador to the African Union, Africa has such great resources, but they are depending upon too many European nations and others, China, etc., to harvest or to handle the resources. And so having a joinder with Americans throughout with blacks throughout the diaspora could be a real win-win situation. So there are a lot of different forces that are pushing on that. So whether it's Dr. Shumbori Quayle, whether it's Regent Price, whether it's Dr. Muhammad, and Ray Gilpin and others with the United Nations, a lot of forces are coming together to try to bring a great joinder. And, the course we're having taught is an entrepreneurship course. And we have folks from probably 8 or 10 African countries that are in attendance in the course. And we're hoping this is going to be a precursor for many great things to happen to bring about that kind of joinder.
Dr. Chiyomboro Kwao has been on here 2 or 3 times. Very good friend of ours over here at Dream Creator Studio, Hannibal Media Group. We're trying to work with her too with the ADDI and create those, strengthen those relationships, with Mother Africa. That's awesome to hear.
Well, I'm one of her advisory board members, so
yes,
I've worked with her too, and we champion her work. I think what she's doing, she's got a beautiful vision. And I've been able to meet folks, whether it's in Haiti or South America or whatever parts of the islands, because it's not just U.S. and Africa. It goes a lot further. And like the University of the West Indies has been a major part of what they're trying to shape up. So I think that there's a lot of good that can happen out of the joinder of people throughout the diaspora.
All right. As we, begin to wind our time together down here, what is the blessed hope there, Mr. Bledsoe, as we look at the state of Texas, standing against critical race theory with them trying to enact suppressive voting laws? What is the blessed hope? What do we want to happen? What is success?
I think success is trying to come up with an amalgamation where we bring the people of goodwill, and that's going to be 60% of the people, the greater in this country. We need to somehow look at what Dr. King did and how he brought forces together and brought and united people. And so when we looked at what people don't know, when you look at the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65, a higher percentage of Republicans supported those bills than Democrats. We don't really truly understand that, but we need to understand that. So we need to have a movement and breadth. And so where we embrace, we can say, look, we can have our differences in philosophies and what government should do, whether it should be small or large, or whatever. But having a Republican form of government where people that are members of a minority, whether it's racial or religious or whatever, need to be protected. That what we have in this country is an example of what can save the world, because we have conflicts in so many countries around the world, and all that people know to do is to shoot and kill each other, right? And so we've reached something in this country where we have a bit of an accommodation. So you look around the country and you see you have Black representatives, brown representatives, some communities, Asian representatives, or Muslim representatives. So we've reached a way of being able to bring people into a big tent, and the big tent is the best way for humanity. But we've got to some way be able to put that together in an amalgamation that we can say that some things transcend politics, and so there's some basics here that bring people together. And so until you get that together, because when we do that, and we ensure that the 60% of the people or more in this country that share that belief and the fundamental humanity and decency, and that people should have certain individual freedoms and protections. If we do that, that'll provide the kind of floor that we won't be threatened again. Because see, what's occurred here with the ascendancy of President Trump and what he was able to do is pretty frightening, because there's always been this undercurrent. And this undercurrent was there, but people didn't know how to utilize it. And so you added Trump's charisma, and people hate to say it, but he's got charisma to a certain segment of the community with Steve Bannon's brain. And it created a huge deal that we're dealing with today.
Man. Wow. Well, like we say for this piece, the struggle continues. But always to God be the glory. That's what Molly Bell says, straight out of Compton. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on with this Coffee Conversations with Greg J. This has been a great time, and would love for you to come back and let's continue to chop it up about all things. Look, I feel smarter already, So that's it. That's good stuff. You guys can if you missed it, it's okay. It's right there on Coffee Conversations with Greg J on our Facebook page. Go over to Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com, so you can see that there. And if you miss it, you got the audio version. We're going to upload that a little later on wherever you get your podcasts. I'm talking Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Spreaker, Stitcher, just you name it, wherever you get your favorite podcast, it'll be there. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Always remember, love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings. Yes, sir.